Welcome to our sport marketing video broadcast today. Today I'm joined here with Tanner Smith, Zach Van Netten, Alex DeCepolo, and Marcus Stockwell. You want to cover the question for us there, Tanner?
Yeah, so the question that we're going to be discussing over the course of the vodcast is, in the NBA, Chicago Bulls champion Michael Jordan received a base annual playing salary of around 30 to 35 million US dollars per year. Based on the information we have gathered, we're going to be discussing the following. Do we consider this an appropriate wage for one of the world's leading sports stars?
So one of the first things that we want to cover is just Jordan's physical value when it comes to how much value he provided to teams, to the NBA, and just basketball as a sport, as well as his monetary value, and with some comparisons to the stars of the time that he played with, as well as the stars of our current era. Does anyone want to kick that off?
Yeah, I'll just go into how crazy Michael Jordan's salary was. So during the 1997-98 season, Michael Jordan had a base salary of $33,140,000. So that was obviously the highest salary in the league. And then the second highest salary was Patrick Ewing, who made $20,500,000. And that's a difference of $12,640,000, which is pretty crazy. Just to take that in perspective, if you take Patrick Ewing, who made the second most money, and combine his salary with David Robinson's, who had the fifth highest paid player in the league, that value would still be under Michael Jordan's salary.
I feel like the fact that he was just getting paid more than the entire team combined just goes to show how much money he was really making. I know it's kind of difficult to compare to there's players getting paid the NBA salary cap of that time now, but I guess we have to take into account the value of money and how it's changed over time.
Yeah. Even with the value of money though, if his salary he was making that this season, he'd still be the 22nd highest paid player in the NBA.
Yeah, so basically what I found is that having a player like a Michael Jordan on your team just brings in an insane amount of publicity, news, media, all that stuff, like the jersey sales, the new fans, the ticket sales. It just provides such a great increase overall for a franchise, and he just has an unparalleled influence. And a case honestly can be made in my mind that he is worth that money. But as Zach mentioned, going over the salary cap individually for your entire team isn't really a great look in my opinion. But like I said, he is such a staple of the game, and he's unlike any other player. Comparing the stars that Zach mentioned, like Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robertson, Karl Malone, an interesting thing that I found is that if you look at the stars of his playing time, most of their revenue and net worth comes from their playing career itself, whereas you have a guy like Jordan, 5.5% of his net worth comes from his actual playing time. So just knowing that and seeing that he is almost a multi-billionaire, you really see the true influence a player like him did have and how that's kind of shaped the game today, seeing the contracts, the style of play and all that. And ultimately, in my mind, there is no doubt that he is worth that $30 to $35 million figure. But as it's proven, the value, as I just mentioned, that he provides to an overall organizational standpoint to a team, but it is kind of a bad look when you have one player making your entire salary cap for a team.
On top of that, too, it was at the time, as much as it didn't look great that he was taking up the team's entire salary cap on his own, he also was easily the most marketable player in all of sports. So him having that dominance over everybody else in the league kind of made it, I think, seem a little bit more okay, just because of the fact that he had outside revenue streams and marketing with NASCAR, DraftKings, Nike, his own brand, which brought in even more money into the NBA. So as much as it may not have looked great that he was taking up over the entire salary cap, he did make it back to the NBA with what he was marketing himself.
I just wanted to kind of go off Alex's point here. When Michael Jordan first entered the league, his contract was for 7 years, $6.3 million, with a $250,000 signing bonus and a $455,000 base salary. And I just kind of wanted to talk about your point and how you said that if he's worth that $35 million. Well, we can see when he first came into the league, he was only evaluated, or to be said to be worth around $6.3 million. So in his playing time in those first couple of years, he kind of, like with his monetary value and his physical value, he was able to kind of demonstrate his worth to his organization.
Kind of like grow his value over time.
Right. So, like getting to that 35 million, getting to over that salary cap contract.
But yeah, compared to the time when Jordan played, the media coverage has definitely been changed. The broadcasting deals are a lot bigger. The marketability of players is bigger, sponsorships, and everything's just changed.
Yeah, like if you look in the broadcasting deals, definitely one of the main sources of revenue for a league, really helps fund your league. So we'll take a look at the deal that the NBA signed in 2014 with ABC, ESPN, and TNT. That generates about $2.66 billion a year. In the peak of Jordan's era, the television deal was worth like approximately $660 million a season. And it's not like the players in Jordan's era were making like more percentage of the revenue than the players today are. It's been 53%.
And that the revenue has to be like shared among teams. At 660 million,
Yeah.
like there are NBA teams today that are worth way more than 660 million.
Yeah.
And that just really puts into perspective.
Thing that I kind of found is that, jumping off Zach's point, is that just as a whole, not just broadcasting, but the league-wide revenue has just grown tremendously since the era of Jordan. Like last year alone, they made $10 billion throughout that season, with the top 3 revenue streams being TV rights, their sponsorship deals, as well as merchandising. And when we kind of consider this, it shows that the shares of this increased revenue and the contracts within the $30 to $35 million range are like much more common and frequent, because they have the facets and capacity to kind of hand out these contracts because of these increases in revenue that weren't really present in the era of Jordan. And if you kind of look at the spike in popularity that the league's seen with social media, broadcasting, and the overall league-wide coverage, it just, like I said, it provides a whole new revenue stream that wasn't there before. And when you kind of compare that to Jordan, a player like him wasn't really getting that type of revenue because it wasn't present.
Yeah.
And I believe, like, if you really account for these heightened revenues being present, if he was playing, he would 100% have accustomed to receiving more of those revenues because of the influence he played.
So if Jordan was able to have this back in his day, you can only imagine the amount of growth that he would have around the sport, even more than he already did with social media impacting that.
So like fans are more accessible in today's day.
Yeah. I mean, it's
players.
easier to reach fans, especially you're reaching fans that are at a younger age too, because they're mainly the ones that are using social media and viewing sports, whereas like in Jordan's era, I feel like most people that were reading newspapers were mainly adults, and today it kind of has a more broad age range for how you're going to bring fans in.
Yeah.
And they just weren't able to have that back in Jordan's era. So it would have been cool to see like how the NBA and him could have even grown larger during his career.
One thing that I found too about kind of going back to like the funds that the league had at that time, the 4 main sources of league revenue was international television, luxury suite sales, which we definitely do not see anymore. That is not even close to the top 4. Plus we have sponsorships, which are still that, and then arena signage. We really don't see much arena signage much anymore. Now it's just all like, for hockey, you have the things on the boards and kind of things like that. So I know you had an idea of what's it called, like NIL deals that you talked about before.
The NIL deals didn't really exist before Jordan, and just kind of comparing it today in like the professional athletes, we can kind of compare Jordan to LeBron James in the sense that they're kind of like one of the best to ever kind of like, they're like the generational talents. And we can see today like LeBron has over 130 million Instagram followers. So that is like kind of like what Jordan could have been missing, all that attention, what he could have been missing from his time playing.
I guess it really shows how much times have changed. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but 30 years definitely can make a lot of improvements and stuff.
Yeah.
especially with the advancements in technology.
So basically, I ended up reading an article by Mary McDonald. She's a scholar in Journal of Sport Management, and I read an article with a focus on The Last Dance, so the show that came out about Jordan and the '98 Bulls that was released during the pandemic, and how that kind of allowed the modern generation to like embrace and loathe into Jordan's relentlessness and success throughout his career. And the article kind of mentions a flip of a switch moment, which kind of led to Jordan being cut from his high school team, and how that kind of flipped the switch in him to like get the grind set going. The passing of his father also was a key moment in his career, and how he kind of rekindled the passion for baseball that he shared with his father. And the narrative of the story then cuts to Jordan crying in the locker room after being successful in winning the 95-96 championship on Father's Day, which was for sure a surreal moment for him. And when you kind of incorporate and consider all the setbacks and barriers that were presented to Jordan, like segregation, the media that we covered, all the access, every barrier that he faced, it's just surreal to still see him on top, facing all the success that he had. And it shows how resilient and one of a kind he truly was when you see the emotions, pressure, like everything that I mentioned. They just could not stop Jordan from being successful, and it really promoted and heightened his brand image. And it makes him a modern America success story, and honestly, can't think of many other athletes that do it. Like Ali, Babe Ruth, like he's up there with all those athletes.
I feel like it's also difficult to kind of like connect to this idea because we weren't around for Jordan's time. We weren't there when everything went down. So The Last Dance kind of just provides us like with a real life sort of experience where we can experience Jordan's career by bits and pieces and by specific parts that make you feel like you're part of it. I want everyone's short opinion. Do they or do they not believe that Jordan was worth his money, or was he worth more? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I fully believe Jordan was worth his money. He promoted the game and kind of gave the NBA a face, just because of how largely known he was worldwide. And I believe that he gave he's given the NBA the opportunity to make all of that money back for themselves. And I fully believe he was worth all of the money he made in the contracts he had.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely hard to like put a number on like how much a player like Jordan should make. Like if you think about it, he's selling out Bulls games every day. Like people aren't there to watch other players on the Bulls. They're there to see Michael Jordan.
Well, Pippen's good too.
Yeah, like the sponsors that want to get in work with the Bulls.
Yeah,
they want to work with Jordan. So yeah, it's just hard to say that he was underpaid despite the amount of money that he made. But I can definitely see the argument for people saying that he's overpaid. But
I think it's an interesting argument too, because like I said, Jordan did bring a crazy amount of fans, and like a bunch of the people nowadays wearing the Jordan branded shoes aren't necessarily basketball fans. So like when you look at that and you see the net worth of 1.8, like Zach said, it's kind of hard to justify. And then when you also look at the salary cap, a single player going over your salary cap, it's not a good look. But honestly, considering the influence, you got to think like he is a reason why the NBA is where it is today, and especially shows like The Last Dance do promote that. So I do think he is worth the money. I don't know if he's worth more, but I think he definitely proved that he is worthy of earning that type of money.
And I just think because of like the revenue streams that were available at that time, Jordan was paid fairly. And we can see from his net worth now, over time, the growth of his brand, the Jumpman logo, all of these kind of factors into his total net worth and the money he was able to make outside of just playing basketball. His contract being $13 million away from everyone else in the league is kind of like hard to really digest and comprehend.
Yeah.
But because of how good he was and because of who he was, I believe that he was paid fairly for playing.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you guys. I feel like he could only get as much money as they had, and they're already going over the salary cap. Every team at the time was, so they really couldn't do much more for him. But yeah, when people think of basketball, they're always going to think of Jordan. Everyone's going to think of Jordan. He's one of the main topics that people will talk about and forever. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, and hope you guys enjoyed.